So we got some new jobs data today, and I want to go over it with you because I think it's really important to understand the economy and what Donald Trump is up to. These are the headlines. There are more Americans out of work than there are jobs open for the first time since April 2021. You also got this. There's a new evidence the job market is softening. And this from the Fed. Fed's beige book shows little or no growth across most of the USA. Now, I'm sure you already know that things are ugly out there, be it from your own experience or family members' experience, people around you. It's hard to find a good job. And even if you do find something, it may not necessarily pay what you wanted, or when you're looking and you do find something, it takes a really long time. Let me show you this chart here. This really tells the story. So these are the job openings, right? And I think the numbers came in at 7.18 million. That's the lowest it's been in a really long time. And it's the lowest in nearly a year. But if you take a look at this, this is the really warning sign. The unemployed numbers, so that is 7.24 million, is now greater than the jobs openings, right? And effectively, you're just seeing it, like you're seeing unemployment go up, and you see job openings go down. And even when you talk about job openings, I think you guys know this kind of stuff already. Sometimes jobs you'll see on the internet aren't really real. They could be pre-selected, right? They've already chosen someone, and they're didn't take down that posting. Or sometimes companies will leave postings up, and they don't want to take it down because if they do, it kind of signals that they're struggling, meaning, hey, we're not hiring. It's really ugly out there. And I know you guys know this stuff already, but it looks really stark when you see the numbers. And when you look at what the White House is tweeting out today, it shows you how disconnected they are. If you see this, so this is from them, and basically they're bragging about Melania and her tennis court. For real. It says in 2020, the First Lady, Melania Trump, shared her creative vision for the White House tennis pavilion. And I guess this thing is award winning, and I guess we're all celebrating that we're all playing tennis. And it reminds me of sort of the famous quote from the French Revolution. I think it was Antoinette was like, let them eat cake, which is basically when, people, are starving, hey, give me food. And they're like, well, you can eat cake. It was just like completely disconnected, because it's kind of like, when people are, hey, we need to find a job. It's really tough out there. Look at the price of eggs. And it's like, well, just go play tennis, right? Look at us. We're playing tennis. We're awesome. And why don't you go play tennis? Things are fine. Or, this is how disconnected they are. Or like Trump is out tweeting. It says, Trump economy raises optimism to 4-year high. Like what? And they're quoting the Washington Examiner and some sort of poll by McLaughlin Associates. I don't even know who these people are. And it's funny because I was thinking about this, where I've said it many times. I think Trump may actually believe the delusions that he's told by all the sycophants and cultists around him. So he may actually believe the stuff that everyone's like really optimistic about the economy. But it's when you look at the jobs number, it tells a very, very different story. And when you see the kind of jobs that they're kind of bragging about, this was yesterday. That's the Peter Ducey dude over at Fox, and he's like showing Trump his phone, and they were talking about, well, what are you throwing out the White House window? And they're tweeting this out as a meme for like recruiting at ICE. So basically they're saying, hey, the only jobs in America right now, or I guess the best job according to them, is arresting your neighbors, right? And throwing on a mask and tactical gear and go arrest your neighbors. America needs you. Or they'll tweet this out, and I guess this is the new meme. Adios, terrorists eliminated, according to Trump and them. I guess if you really want another job you can do for the Trumpers is blow up small boats near Venezuela and the Caribbean. Regarding that, I saw this just come out from the Washington Post. It says, Trump ordered strike on suspected drug boat to send a message, Rubio says. The administration has not provided a legal authority or justification for the attack that killed 11 people. Basically, they could have stopped the boat. They didn't have to just shoot. Like literally, you can just stop, right? I mean, it's just like a little boat. And what people were mentioning in the comments, and you guys are very smart, is like, whether or not it's a fishing boat, I don't know, but it's a small boat. And if they're really smuggling something, you're not going to be smuggling something in a small boat when most of the people in it are people, right? I mean, like most of the stuff in it is people, so it didn't really make sense there. And they didn't have to blow it out of the water. This is what Rubio said. It said, instead of interdicting it on the president's orders, we blew it up, and it'll happen again. So like they could have they didn't have to blow it up. That was like a Trump's orders, and they call it it's a precision strike. Rubio then says it's an immediate threat to the United States, giving the country the right to destroy it. Like what? Or he'll say this: the president has a right to eliminate immediate threats to the United States. This president is not a talker; he's a doer. He's going to do it. And again, this boat was like not even near the USA. It's small, and they're acting like there's some sort of imminent threat that you have to destroy. So there's that. And I'm bringing this stuff up because when I sort of see how all this is playing out, it really does feel like Donald Trump wants everything to be basically a game show, Squid Gamey, Hunger Games kind of thing, to where people are fighting for jobs, people, were arresting their neighbors and things like that for their entertainment. And it's true. If the Trump kids had it their way, they would be out doing the purge all day, every day. I'm sure you guys know. And I saw this, and it's sort of what I was thinking about when that sort of Trumpy Hunger Games kind of world. We may get some movement on the Epstein stuff. So it says Epstein survivors call on Trump, Congress to release the records. Now, I think there's a possibility they could just release their own list, because if you know some of the people, then you collectively could just release that. So I don't know why they wouldn't. Speaker Johnson saying we'll put it all out there. I don't trust anything he says, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, it says right here, it says she will read the names of Epstein accomplices in Congress. I mean, you never know. So this particular issue is certainly not going away from Trump. I know for some people they say, blowing up ships in the Caribbean, or anything that Trump does is all distraction from this. And if you want to believe that, you can. I'll just say this is all part of a larger culture of, do we want to have a society where, again, everyone else is part of a game show, Squid Game, Hunger Games for the wealthy entertainment, or do we want to build a society where there's justice for everyone? So I'll leave it at that. But it's just really apparent, though, when I go through the news every day, like Trump's plan, and I mentioned Squid Game stuff because here's another one. Pentagon plans for 600 military lawyers to backfill immigration judges. Like, we're essentially allocating all our resources to that. I just don't know what to say. And then the jobs numbers also revealed that the strongest sector for hiring is actually starting to slow down, and that's healthcare. So this is actually quite troubling if you're talking about jobs. It says, of note, there's a particularly steep drop in the number of openings in healthcare, which has been an outsized contributor to the overall job creation in recent years. So if healthcare is struggling, and everything else is like also struggling, and this was the strongest one, it's really not a good sign. And then, you'll see local headlines like this: Northern Light Health announces job cuts. That's a facility closure in Maine. And how this thing works, and if you guys are curious, like where we get national numbers or how we get, national discussion is, you're going to get various reports from various states, various cities, and then you put it all together and give you sort of an overall picture. Now, obviously, everyone's industry and city and state is going to be different. So this is what's really interesting when you look at what the Fed says, because they actually break it down by region, giving just anecdotal evidence, right? So it's not like official in the sense of, one person's experience could be different from another's. But if everyone's sort of telling you similar stories, you get a sense of what's going on. And let me go through this stuff, and you'll get a sense of what people are saying. So this is from the Fed, and they said in Boston, quote, for white-collar roles, job candidates became less selective in accepting offers, but maintained a preference for remote and hybrid work, meaning that, at least in Boston, people are like, okay, I'm getting close to taking anything, right? Because I just need to find something, but I still prefer to take remote or hybrid. And I think a lot of people may be in that. It depends where you are, in your skill set and in which industry. But in New York, and again, these are just all anecdotal, a coffee roaster reported that tariffs on Brazilian coffee and on other supplies were creating shockwaves through the supply chain. Now, I know this stuff is probably going to affect everyone, right? Because if you're in the coffee business, you got to get your beans from somewhere. And, right, Brazil, could be Vietnam, anywhere, costs are going up. And I had heard this also, someone mentioned in the community that even if, say, your local store doesn't necessarily raise cost or price of the coffee, because they still have to pay the tariffs, they will try to cover it up by raising the cost of the bagel, right? Raise the price of the bagel, if you guys know what I'm saying. So they'll mask it that way. But yes, if you're in this business, you probably know this stuff already. Some people tried to avoid the tariffs by ordering early, but when you're out of stock, right? Because you had a bunch in your inventory, and now you got to order more under the current tariff system. It's really, really expensive. Here's Philadelphia. They say nonprofits reported that higher prices have increased the demand for basic needs, including food, shelter, and utilities. Right. So people and someone actually mentioned the community before too, in their neck of the woods where there's long lines for food banks and these kind of things. It makes sense, and I always want to be sensitive about this stuff because it's. I always remember that these are real people when you read this thing. Like these are real people being affected by the awful things that Trump is up to. Right? He doesn't care, and I'll just say this: for any leader that you pick, it doesn't matter which party. Just any leader that you pick, make sure they understand like your situation. Make sure they actually listen, and that's why I go through this stuff with you guys because I think it's important to just hear how real people are handling things. This is in Cleveland. It says here, 2 auto dealers who expected sales to decline cited affordability concerns and increased strain on household budgets. Right, cars are too expensive. It just doesn't fit in the budget. Here's another one from Richmond. A printer manufacturer that doesn't import products experienced increased costs ranging from 5 to 15% from suppliers who were subject to tariffs. Right? So even if you're not experiencing the cost yourself, you're doing business with other people that are, right? So we're all connected here. This is Atlanta. Travel and tourism contacts were cautiously optimistic about the fall and holiday travel season ahead. So they're hoping things are going to get better. That's from Atlanta. Actually we'll go with Chicago here. Increases in fertilizer prices due to the higher tariffs raise farmers' concerns over financing costs for their 2026 operations. And I think a lot of fertilizer comes from Canada, if I'm not mistaken, but it could come from other places. Well, I'm not an expert at fertilizer. I don't pretend to be, but I do understand that not all of it may necessarily come from the U.S. Here's St. Louis. Some contacts reported that wages were higher due to normal annual pay increases, okay? And others attributed the rise of keeping up with higher living costs and retaining talented workers. Interesting. So that's in St. Louis. I'd be curious if you guys have heard anything about this. From Minneapolis, job seekers looking for employment in more physically demanding jobs like cooks, servers, landscapers, hairstylists were still able to get jobs with relative ease, but overall opportunities were contracting. And it's interesting when the way that they say these ones, a lot of these would be done by undocumented workers like cooks, servers, landscapers, hairstylists. I'm not certain on that one. So you guys can let me know if you feel that that's a job that undocumented workers would work. It's possible, but I think definitely cooks, servers, landscapers, but I'm not sure. I just don't know about hairstylists. And do we have a shortage of that? I don't know. That one I really don't know. And I'd like to, hairstylists, interesting. And you guys can also let me know the average cost of haircuts as well, because it's going to be different all over the map. And then if there is indeed a shortage of hairstylists, right, then the price theoretically would be up. Kansas City, they say, anecdotal reports include families opting for staycations in place of extended travel and some households returning vehicles within a year to avoid the burden of loan payments. I haven't heard that one. It makes sense though. And I didn't know you could do that. I mean, I guess if you're leasing something, you could do that. And I guess you could say returning if like you take out a loan and just give it back. I mean, I don't know. I've never tried that one. I'd be curious your guys' experience in that one. Have you bought a car and within a year take it back? Huh. Well, that's in Kansas City. And here's in Dallas. Staffing firms reported slow hiring activity, with a couple of contacts noting that companies were opting to relocate workload internally or cutting staff in response to cost pressures from tariffs. A restaurant chain cited plans to automate in some areas to reduce labor costs. And the automation in restaurants, I know, like the kiosk is a pretty big thing. We have that all over here where I live in Busan. And me personally, I prefer the kiosk. I can see the menu. I put whatever I want. And they actually have them at every table. We have robot servers in a few places, very, very, very little, but that technology does exist. And, I know some places have like, how do I say it, automated coffee and drink machines. We have places here that actually no staff at all. It's all automated. I've made a video on this stuff if you want to watch it. I'll put a link down there. But this is something that, yeah. And I even think Chipotle, I remember hearing that they're going to go more automated in their things. So anyway, that's what's going on in the job market. I just want to show you guys the numbers, what people's experiences are, how Trump is responding to it. And I also want to hear from you. I know things are ugly out there. And if you want to look at the markets, the bet is at the moment is the Fed's going to have to cut because things look weak, but it may not be a good cut in the sense of like, Wall Street's like, oh, how cuts, cheap money, how fantastic. If things get like really, really bad and they have to cut even more, it shows extreme weakness in the job market, which is obviously not good for the economy. So that's my thoughts. I want to hear yours, and I'll catch you on the next video.